Alright, welcome back to Asphyxia. So, last time everything kind of went to hell. Sam's really emotional, but the only person she's looking to help for right now is Lillian. Lillian feels sad when she tries to help her, so we're in a rock and hard place. So, we're gonna see what we can do to work on this. It took Samantha and Lillian only 10 minutes to reach the youth hostel. Samantha knew if she had tried to find this place on her own, it would have taken her hours and hours, but to Lillian such a task was simple. Sometimes Samantha wondered if the whole universe reshaped itself underneath Lillian's feet simply to make life easier for her. Lillian was so sensible and self-assured, she probably could have orientated herself in the Antarctic where everything was pure white, not a landmark in sight. The youth hostel itself was a small wooden building, distinctly unremarkable, surrounded by a sprawling field of deep purple heather. The heather swayed in the breeze like ocean waves. Roberta stood amidst these flowers, her hair tumbling in carefully controlled curls around her shoulders. Had she been waiting out here in the cold, with only her cardigan for protection, searching for Samantha? I can't talk today. Samantha felt humbled. So Roberta really did care for her, after all, despite the cruel things she had said. Maybe she shouldn't have run away. It was a melodramatic reaction on her part, and it had caused Roberta to worry. That much was evident by the pained look on the other girl's face. Ah! The moment Roberta saw Samantha walking towards her, through the heather, she lifted her head, lips parted. For a few brief moments, a smile flickered across her lips, but this was soon doused by a serious frown. So I see you didn't get lost after all. Well, I did get lost, but I had help. Lillian found me and brought me here. Lillian, huh? It's nice to see you. Roberta gave Lillian a mistrustful glance. Her eyes narrowed slightly, which rather suggested she found Lillian's presence about as nice as having a tooth extracted without anesthesia. Lillian returned the less than cordial greeting with a small nod of her head, her expression unreadable. The pleasure is all mine. It was lucky that Samantha found you. It's nice to know she has a friend who's so reliable. Jeez. The sarcasm in Roberta's tone was not lost on Lillian, but the older girl did not react. She rarely did. As the head of the student council, it is my duty to ensure the safety of my fellow students. I was simply doing my job, so there is no need to compliment me. Samantha winced at that. Of course, Lillian was just doing her job. That was why she had let the trembling Samantha lightheaded after crying so hard for so long to the youth hostel. It was not because they were friends. Not anymore. It was because Lillian was doing her job. Was that all Samantha was to Lillian now? Just another point on her checklist she had to cross off? A minor nuisance that she had to take care of? If so, it hurt. It hurt so much Samantha could hardly stand it. Sam? Roberta looked at Samantha, who must have involuntarily winced at the thought of Lillian. Are you alright, Sam? You look as though you've been crying. It was one thing that Lillian knew about, and had seen Samantha's embarrassing breakdown, but Roberta, I think she's going to catch on to. That would be far too humiliating. I don't think she's going to believe a lie from you, Samantha. I mean, your eyes are all puffy. You've been crying for hours. It's going to show. And if she finds out we told Lillian and didn't tell her, who is actually our friend in this situation, it's going to be bad. So it's best to just tell her. Oh, well, Samantha looked up at Lillian. The older girl stood there, one hand on her hip, a small frown on her face. Why should Lillian look just the same as ever when she had just broken Samantha's heart? How could she be so cold? Maybe she had never cared for Samantha at all. She had certainly never cared for Samantha as much as Samantha cared about her. Lillian and we had a talk, but Lillian decided that we were incompatible. Incompatible? That's right. Well, at least I know where I stand now. You were right, Roberta. All this time you were right. I was a fool for not believing you. Samantha sniffed, wiping her eyes with the back of her arm. Was she going to cry again? No, not this time. She wouldn't allow it. She didn't want to give Lillian the satisfaction. Not that she truly believed Lillian was cruel enough to derive This is not a good story to read, not be able to talk. Derive pleasure from her suffering. Roberta's face softened. It was clear she knew what Samantha meant, even though her words were vague. Oh, Sam, you silly girl. I told you this would happen. I know, but I kept on hoping. Now I realize I was wrong. Sam, you poor thing. Roberta glanced at Lillian. She was slightly shorter than the other girl, but she made up for it with the intensity of contempt in her voice. I hope you're pleased with yourself, Lillian. You just alienated the one person in the world who loves you the most. It was not with malicious intent, I promise you. It was for her own good. Then why did you make her cry so much? How could that be for the greater good? I did it because I care about her. If you keep pandering to her like that, she will not get better. Sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go inform Miss Pope that Samantha and I have returned, as it appears Samantha is in no fit state to tell her herself. And with that, Lillian brushed past Roberta, her blonde hair fluttering as she exited the room. The room? Exited the field? Did it say room? Yeah, room. This is a field. Roberta stared after her back, her mouth open like a goldfish. It seemed not even Roberta could believe quite how coldly Lillian had blown her off. That girl. I have no idea what you see in her. Samantha wished she could reply in the affirmative, but she could not. Even after everything Lillian had said to her, she still loved her. She loved her more than ever. To insult Lillian when she was no longer in the room and could not defend herself would be a great injustice. Samantha could not do it. She could never have hated Lillian, no matter what, not even if she belittled her feelings or made her cry or even broke her bones. That was how deep Samantha's irrational affections ran. Well, she is very smart, and she's so forthright, too. She never tells lies to make other people feel better. She always says exactly what she thinks. Roberta looked Samantha up and down, taking in her bedraggled hair, her puffy eyes, her red cheeks. And is that really such a good thing? I don't know. Maybe? Perhaps people should be hard on me more often, just as you were this morning. I probably deserve it. Roberta winced. She'd been so relieved to see Samantha again, and then so horrified to see just how woebegone her friend looked, that she had almost forgotten what had transpired between them earlier. She must have looked like such a hypocrite, berating Lillian for her coldness, when she herself had been inexcusably cruel to Samantha only an hour or so prior. Look, Sam, I'm sorry about that. Why are you sorry? Weren't you telling the truth? I was, but I should have handled it more delicately. I was being unfair. I apologize. Samantha offered Roberta a small smile. It was hesitant, unsteady, as though delivered by a girl who did not know what smiling truly was, but it was a smile all the same. Thank you, Roberta. I'm sorry if I've been taking you for granted. You are a far better friend than I deserve. Oh, well, that didn't go poorly, so we can all be happy about that. Alright. We are in the eating area? Chatter filled the air, mingled with the sound of scraping chairs and clinking cutlery. Yep, as the students of St. Mary's sat at the long table laid out in the dining room of the hostel. The dining hall was about as extravagant as Samantha had expected. Those chairs are pretty extravagant. It was a small, cramped space with a sloping ceiling that threatened to collapse in on itself at any moment, Really? There's a chandelier in here. I don't think we're seeing the same thing. It doesn't have a door. That's a problem. The walls were painted white and were warped with old age, buckling under the weight of the ceiling. The floorboards were wooden. Are they? It looks like they're square. It looks like they're tile. And squeaked horribly with every single footstep that passed over them, as though they were filled with mice. Samantha looked down the table, trying to catch Lillian's eye. Stop it! But the older girl had been steadfastly ignoring her ever since their discussion at the lake. This was no different than it had been during the last 3 months, but Lillian's cool demeanor stung Samantha anew, like salt water to an open wound. It must have been because she had hoped. Samantha allowed herself to believe that their relationship could still be repaired, and that was why it hurt all the more to realize it could not. It was too late. Samantha did not want to think about Lillian, though she thought about little else. She wanted to concentrate on something else, anything else. But what was there to focus on? Why would we focus on Georgia and Percy? Not DeQuincy. Roberta. Roberta's perfect. Focus on Roberta. Here we go. Samantha looked at Roberta. The other girl was sat beside her, her palms spread out, fingers extended. There was a small, white, circular tablet resting in the center of her palm, which trembled slightly at their smallest of movements. A small, white, circular tablet. Samantha watched as Roberta brought her palm to her mouth and placed the tablet inside it. Then in a weird... palm to their mouth. Placed the tablet inside... Okay, so it's medicine. Then in a weary manner that suggested she had done this innumerable times before, Roberta picked up a glass of water and swallowed. Samantha could not help but feel like something of a voyeur as she watched Roberta swallow, her throat convulsing slightly. For some reason, Samantha was not sure why, watching other people take medicine seemed like a deeply intimate invasion of privacy. Maybe it was because when people fell seriously ill, they were ushered into hospitals, hidden away inside white rooms as though they had something to be ashamed of, some secret to hide. Well, she was being melodramatic. Melodrama was something she excelled at, always had done. Roberta may have been required to take medicine every other day, but she was hardly knocking on death's door. Roberta was just too sensible to die an early death. Okay. She was not the kind of person who succumbed to illness, no matter how intense, and this particular illness was something many people suffered from, all across the world. Is it your allergies? Are they playing up? Roberta nodded, brushing a few strands of hair out of her eyes as she did so. That's right. I thought they would die down in the winter, and they did for a while. But they've been getting worse again. Just the room was shaking. I was confused. I suppose spring really is around the corner. A sigh. Spring should be such an enchanting season, but there's just so much pollen everywhere. The English countryside is the worst for it. It's at times like this I'm glad I live in London. Well, if your eyes start to water, you shouldn't rub them. That will only make it worse. Thank you, Sam. Roberta gave Samantha a withering look. I know that, Samantha. I've had to deal with my hay fever all my life, whilst you have only had to deal with it whilst you have been friends with me. I suppose that's true. Samantha laughed, pressing the tips of her fingers together at her front. Roberta was right. She was almost always right. Why had Samantha tried to offer her advice, anyway? She had just been trying to be friendly, but it was all quite unnecessary, really. Anyway, Roberta frowned, her lips pursed. It was an expression Samantha knew well, as Roberta often had cause to direct it at her. You seem somewhat restless. You haven't eaten very much either. Are you feeling all right? I'm not hungry. The food killed my appetite. Any appetite I may have had. What is it? And even if the food had been delicious, which it decidedly, categorically was not, Samantha doubted she would have been able to eat much of it anyway. She still felt sick. Well, that's certainly true. You should try to eat more, though. We have a busy day tomorrow. We'll be doing a lot of walking. Did we ever do that homework assignment that we were supposed to be doing earlier? Did that just get brushed under the rug? Samantha groaned. She did not even want to think about tomorrow. What was the point of tomorrow if it was without Lillian? What other purpose did she have to get out of bed at all? She should never have come on this trip. Why had she come on this trip? All Samantha wanted to do was disappear, like rivulets of water running down the drain. Well, the bedroom. Well, I feel like this might be a fairly good spot to end it for this episode. We'll go to bed and wake up refreshed for the next day, and ready to do whatever it is we're doing on this trip, glaciation studies, which we've heard so little about. And yeah, we'll study some glaciers, or glaciation. Maybe it doesn't relate to glaciers, I'm just guessing. See you next time.